Okay, here we are. We are live on Goddess Vibrations. I hope you missed us. We took a week off. We had to rest. We had a last minute cancellation, decided to use the opportunity to rest. And Kirti was kind enough to come back on her off week to pick up where we left off, part 2 on polyamory or monogamy. And what we wanted to focus on this week is maybe it doesn't matter so much what your structure is, but maybe what's more important is that you are in a authentic, conscious relationship that creates more freedom, more love, and expands you to higher levels. And that might be different for everybody because we shouldn't mandate things, including love. And so I wanted to start there, and we probably will maybe share some of our own personal experiences as we're each navigating this. And Kirti and I are kind of on, I don't know if we're on opposite ends of a spectrum, but we kind of are different placements of a spectrum on this topic. So we can go into more of that and how, and also where we connect on this topic. So I will also, and I'll firstly introduce us. So I'm Natasha Edwina, and my background and all of this stuff is I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been doing psychology and social work and therapy for 22 years now, I think. And so I've worked a lot with different family structures, less with couples, I will say. Couples therapy is not my expertise, but of course, in my nature of being a marriage and family therapist, of course, I work with people in relationship. My gift more so has been working with individuals on how to get in touch with their authenticity, their truth, their self-love, their self-worth, so that they can show up and be in a fucking awesome partnership. And I guess, Kirti, you and I are a little bit on opposite ends with that spectrum too, because you work with individuals, but I think you do a lot more work with couples than I probably do, although I do still work with couples. But
Yeah,
how would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, my name is Kirti, and I work with my partner Shofar, and we work with couples together, and we help them remember and tap into their intimacy, of course, on their own and then with each other. And we use lots of different approaches there. And then I do work with women and movement medicine. Mostly women work with me, but I'm also starting to attract more men into the game, and really just using the body as the ultimate tool for understanding who we are. And so I would say that I'm a love coach. I use tantric energy, healing, as well as the arts to help people fall in love with themselves and then have amazing relationships as well. So we have some things in common there.
And I would say, like, I always think the reason why we probably fit together so well, and I know we refer people to each other, and I come to your classes, which I love. And, you've done some of my past life regression and hypnosis and things like that. And we both offer groups, but I feel like, your focus is really the body, but you're still working in the whole mind, body, spirit system. My focus is really the mind, but I'm still working in the whole mind, body, spirit system. So I really enjoy that collaboration with you and that partnership, and, kind of not only the show and teasing out these concepts, but just in working with clients in the different, areas of expertise. And yeah. And of course, we, philosophically, we're very aligned as far as energy medicine, tantra, and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Unity consciousness, collective consciousness, all of that. So that being said, I don't even remember all of what we said when we were talking about polyamory last time. It was a long ways away. And as we were preparing to go live, I was reflecting that this concept of open relating, polyamory versus monogamy versus polyamory versus monogamy has really been something that we've been discussing probably since I met you. And, I was asking you questions about your relationship structure, and just found that being around the two of you was very refreshing, and it felt like very safe. It didn't feel like there was any, weird energy as far as like, oh, I can't talk to this man because I have to go through this
right
first, although there might be some level of that girl code or whatever else, but just a lot of, I would say, mutual trust between the two of you, but also what I see is like mutual connection and commitment and mutual presence. And so that was really just intriguing to me. And then overhearing a conversation between the two of you in Tulum, which I didn't even know what you were talking about, but overhearing just the way that one person was talking and the other was simply listening. And then, I imagine it switched back at a certain point in time. And I thought, wow,
I would hope so.
yeah, it's like so cool. Like, who does that? I mean, that's what you're supposed to do. You could do that in a therapy session, but to actually take that into the real world and be practicing that as it comes up was pretty epic for me as a marriage and family therapist to witness. So I was like, oh, and it just like melted my heart, So
Yeah.
I feel like we've been having these conversations about polyamory, monogamy, open relating, what that really means. And I think one thing that really summed it up that you share often is when we were talking about it in Tulum, you were saying, well, we have, I think, what did you say? We have emotional intimacy with many people, but we don't share our genitals, is what you were saying at that point in time. And I was like, wow, that's kind of like me, because I call myself monogamous, and, I do emotional intimacy for a living. And so I'm very comfortable with having intimate relationships, though my clients are not a two-way relationship, because I'm the space holder and they pay me money for that. And I'm the coach or the guide and they pay me money for that. So I guess it is a two-way. It's just not the way a relationship would happen energetically, equal exchange in the real world. So for me, I don't like to necessarily include that as a definition of polyamory. However, because it feels a little like against my ethical code to say that, to lump those together. But I have the capacity to dive to those depths of intimacy with multiple people at the same time period.
Totally.
Even if it's for an hour a week or whatnot. And I enjoy that. Intimacy is my jam.
Yeah, I think that's why a lot of people probably really enjoy therapy and services like coaching and things like that, because they're able to connect emotionally and intimately, and it's under the guise of a service, sure, but really what's happening energetically and spiritually is pretty deep.
Yeah, for sure. And I've actually had the experience where, after doing this for so many years, there's certain skills that you have of connecting with people just genuinely. And I do genuinely am curious about people. Obviously, I'm gonna know how to connect with somebody unless they're giving me super bad vibes. I'm not interested, or I'm in a place where I'm like, don't talk to me because I've had enough that day. And I've been, and I offer those connection skills and that openness to most people that cross my path. I feel like I have a lot of love to share and spill over, and I work really hard at creating and growing love in my life and in my body. And so I'm happy to share that. And I think sometimes men in particular, I think you've had this experience too, will mistake that for sexual attraction or romantic attraction. Or now they're like, I've never had a connection like this with anyone before. This must be fate. And I'm thinking to myself, oh, I connect like this every day to lots of people, because that's what I do. I connect, but it's interesting because I won't be feeling that sort of thing on my end, but I do have that unconditional love for that soul that's in front of me. And if they're in front of me and they're my space, I'm going to give them my undivided attention and focus and presence. And it makes me realize how rare that is for some people to experience that.
Yeah. And I think that a lot of times people are thinking that, oh, wow, like you are making me feel this way, or that the truth is that, you are so in tune no matter who you connect with, you're going to find a place of connection because you're a connector.
Mm-hmm.
And then when somebody else feels that level of connection that you share, you help them remember that they have the ability to connect as well. You know, it's just has maybe perhaps been out of practice. And sometimes we can think that, oh, the other person is responsible for this feeling. But the truth is, the other person is just sparking that and making it alive. But we're responsible for feeling that and identifying it and putting it into action.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the way we've structured story around these different responses and what we've defined as quote unquote allowed and not allowed. And according to a lot of times, our courtship practices are very cultural and religious because they're ways of, again, controlling humanity and our ability to procreate. And, you know, eventually, you know, wives and property start to become melded. You know, you have things like, you know, just different setups and dowries and betrothed, you know, from a very young age, and agreements where people are making love agreements outside of really the individual's control, which is truly a sovereignty issue, right? And so when we talk about this in Tantra, you know, the principle truly is that, you know, we go in ready to shake that which is holding us prisoner, you know, to our freedom and liberation. And we walk into this on this path willing to shake that up, willing to dance with it, willing to move it around, willing to talk with it, willing to get into the details and the nuances of it, and then see what lessons, you know, that feeling of being held back allows us to learn about ourselves. And so if you think about the story of marriage and partnership and what monogamy means and what polygamy means and what polyamory means and what, you know, it's just multiple wives and all of this, what it all means, it's all very socio-political if you think about it, you know, because the way you see monogamy and the way I see polyamory are the same.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, polyamory is being poly heart, poly love. Yes, I express love to everybody, and I have the ability, like you are expressing, that I have the ability to deeply connect with whoever I connect with. I am in the grocery store connecting with the person who's checking me out, whether they're a man, whether they're a woman, whether they're trans.
Checking you out or checking you out?
Exactly. Unintended.
Oh, either.
Exactly. You know, because it's like everything for me, every human connection is an opportunity to reconnect with the sovereign net worth of humanity on the planet right now. So that is walking that path of connection in a world where separation is the program, you know?
Yeah. Let me say something before I lose it, because I've got you're stimulating a bunch of thoughts. First of all, I think we could write a huge epic book about this, like the two of us, all of this, really untangling this stuff. And I'll say that that way of being is so beautiful. Like, I know that's I watch you out in public, and people are just flocking to you because of that open heart. You know, they just like, it's like they can't get close enough, kind of thing. And then I get protective over you because I'm like, I feel like your bodyguard, like like, give her some space, you know? And I know, as being that open heart, or I guess as you would often refer to, open beam, right? I feel that's when I feel my truest form. You know, that's when I feel my most alive. That's when I feel my most aligned. And also, like, doing hypnosis, like, how fucking deep of a connection is that? I'm connecting with this person on an unconscious level, and then their spirit and spirit guides, you know, all in this whole thing. That's a polyamorous relationship right there, right? And I've really thought about that before. But what if the whole world wasn't so concerned about connecting, disconnecting, and like so conditional about all of this stuff, and was able to just freely express this love and offer it and receive it? Of course, there's boundaries around this and when it's safe or exploited or whatever else. But what a beautiful world that would be. And also, how fucking hard is it to be a woman that operates that way in this world because of what you're saying about like marriage and the history of marriage as it's been practiced in multiple cultures in the history of a patriarchal society the last 5,000 years, and even polyamory, where like I read an article I was sharing when we were on our road trip this weekend, that I read an article that Betty Davis's, or not article, thing on post on Instagram, Betty Davis's husband divorced her and said that she read too much, and she was not a good wife. Like she was into her career more than him or the marriage. And there's been so many women that were suppressed by this idea of marriage or monogamy. And then there were women who were maybe equally or more so suppressed in polyamory because they had these duties, but now they also even less had their needs met because it's several women kind of sharing one man as the way it was practiced. And then we have these more indigenous cultures that they figured it out. They figured out polyamory and that it actually functions and holds a tribe together, right? And it makes more sense so that everybody has a loving parent or adult to raise them. Maybe
Right.
It's not always a parent. And so you see how it worked out. And then you see how, whether it's monogamy or polyamory, it can still be very repressive and oppressive to women. And so when we are looking for an expanded love and we're looking for something bigger, and the guy rolls in on the first or second or third date and is like, yeah, I'm polyamorous, I'm into polyamory, it can feel like, oh shit, like, more oppression. Now I got to worry about STIs, or I got to worry about, can he handle, he can't even we haven't even figured out if we can communicate, let alone communicate these very emotionally vulnerable health conversations, emotional conversations, trigger potential conversations. And I think a lot of times that can turn a woman off. And then I hear some women talking about that they enjoy polyamory, and they love this polyamorous lifestyle and all of that. But when they elaborate more, I realize they're not looking for a partner or raising a child or raising a business or raising a world transforming goal. They are talking about wanting to have fun with multiple partners and not have their body controlled, which to me is dating. That's dating. That's not a conscious relationship. Relationship. It's not I shouldn't say it's not a conscious partnership, right? That's different. So to say that one is polyamory and one's not, I mean, I would say probably most daters should be polyamorous until you figure out. I mean, you don't have to share your genitals. Maybe you only share your genitals with one, but really, if you haven't decided that you found your partner that can go the long haul with you, you probably should be checking out your other options for a while.
Right. Well, and you'll see that in a lot of times setups that start from a foundation of being polyamorous. There's sometimes can be a struggle if somebody wants to find their primary partnership. But if you are you're relating with like multiple partners, well, to find sometimes that primary partner, it has to be a match where both people are like, okay, wow, like we're both committing to this, building this foundation and letting go some of those other connections, because there is only a certain amount of energy that you can really put into building, a solid foundation of a relationship, especially if you're doing, the amount of venting that is required, what, you experienced in Tulum between Shofar and I, is putting that work into practice. And if you're really going to commit to doing the work, it takes time and sometimes hours, extra hours out of your week where you're developing and growing within a partnership and doing the tantric work, doing the energy work, doing the breath work, doing the, shadow work, doing the verbal processing, plus also giving each other space to integrate on your own, which is also a big part of the work. So you can
that's what it takes for a conscious relationship, a conscious
partnership. That it could be so hard to think about, like, okay, well, if you're having multiple partnerships that are doing that at one time, to find the primary partnership, you know, it's going to be like every partnership. If you want to make sure that you are looking for your primary partnership, you also have to put the energy into developing a primary partnership if you want a primary partnership. Yeah. And what you'll find is that a lot of times people are in polyamorous situations that are enjoying it very much so, but then you want the person that you do the holiday dinners with, or that you go to the parties with, or perhaps like you want your partner, you know, that it's like family dinners as well. And just the person that feels like that comfortable person that gets you a little bit more, that you don't have to like coordinate that, okay, Christmas is with this partner, Valentine's is with this partner, Thanksgiving I'm doing here, you know, and then if there's kids involved, that's so much more coordinating. It can feel very challenging. You just, if it's possible. However, again, everybody involved has to be willing and committed to that journey and that process. And that's beautiful. I think it's rare and it's beautiful when it does happen.
Rare. Yeah. I mean, I have a couple friends, I have clients that I've had who are full on living in polyamorous relationships, partnerships, and raising children together, his, hers, theirs, hers, his, you know, all of the children. They have 3, and it works so well structurally because they have so many adults there to tend for the children, and it works for them. And that might not work for everybody, especially if you're, let's say, a person that has a very high sex drive and has a high, you know, sexual needs. You might be more inclined to have access to that partner all to yourself, you know, not have to share their erection or their libido or whatever else. And I find that a lot of times when people are, it seems, I would say especially, well, I don't want to throw men under the bus, it's men and women, but when they are wanting to start out of the gate with a polyamorous partnership, I don't see it, again, I don't see it much different than the dating phase. And yet it sounds like sometimes they want partnership benefits though, in that, you know, it's like whatever that may be, that comes along with a more established connection that you're actually investing into for a future goal that they may not be investing into. It's more so they want the exit or eject button when things get hard, or when it gets stale, or when, you know, it's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna go over here now. Okay, they've had some space now. I can go back over here. It's cooled down, and it's like moving back and forth too.
Well, a good question to always ask, you know, if you're in a partnership and you're questioning if, you know, like maybe one partner or the other is wanting to just, you know, share their beam with more than their partner. And again, you know, we immediately run to the genitals, but it could literally be like, you have a coworker at work that's a really cool person to hang out with, that, you know, your partner is not used to you hanging out with other people. And even if there is a slight attraction with this coworker, you want to have coffee with them because they're cool. And you would like to just be able, you know, to do that. So when you want to approach your partnership about that, and to me, that is a polyamorous move. That is a phase of polyamory where it's like, hey, I'm sharing my intimate energy that I usually share with you. I'm going to actually share that with somebody else. And it's not all of my intimate energy. It's not, you know, it's not my genitals. It's not my, it's not my family history. I'm not sharing my deepest wounds and trauma, but I'm sharing just like my passion about the work that we share.
Well, and I think that happens all the time
in
monogamous relationships, but it's not talked about. And because it's not talked about, or a consent conversation between, I guess to use your word, the primary partnership isn't had, then that's when trouble happens, right? Or even sometimes affairs happen because now it feels taboo, or like, oh, there feels kind of wrong, and then we're sneaking around, and it's like we're already feeling that way, so might as well just have sex anyway because I'm already being punished for this, you know, this relationship or whatever. And
yes, I agree. I think that so when you're in those situations, the question to ask yourself is, am I connecting with this other person from a place of celebration and joy that I'm feeling from my primary partnership? Or am I connecting with this person because I'm feeling lack of intimacy and connection and joy in my primary partnership? So really good place and a good question to ask yourself, because if you're wanting to connect with others because your primary relating is vibing high, then that's understandable. This is called energetic exchange. Now we are actually doing the tantric work. However, if you are connecting with somebody because you feel a lack, right, or you're feeling unseen, unheard, you're more in, we would call the shadow or the wound state, right? Then that is an avoidance strategy, and now you're avoiding dealing with what is real, you know, and compensating when you actually have a beautiful opportunity to be true and honest with who you are, and see if your relationship is willing to have that breakthrough and support your dreams and desires. And if that's not available to you, then you also get to move on and create that for yourself. And so having the freedom to know that you're always choosing the path on which you go on. There's nobody ever pressuring you to be a certain way in your relationship, in your marriage, or in your partnership, other than the story that you choose to believe about love and marriage. And so that's why you got to really be clear on the religious and cultural imprints of love. And that's the first step of the tantric work, is being willing to see the Maya, you know, the story, the illusion that there is a proper way to be, or a successful way to be in love. No, the only way to be in love is your unique, authentic expression based on you doing the work of healing your childhood wounds and healing your relationship, you know, wounds and what you've already experienced. And, you know, that's really what it's about. So depending on how you want to define that, you know, I say, if somebody asks me, oh, you know, what, you know, are you poly? You know, are you polyamorous or are you monogamous? And I say, I'm open. I'm open. I'm open.
Well, I think that's what I'm realizing, learning as I keep coming back to this topic, you know, throughout the years, is that we are, as humans, way more fluid than we give ourselves credit for, whether it's polyamorous, monogamy, that spectrum, or whether it's hetero, homo. There's just such a range. And if you haven't explored, then you don't really know where you fall.
You don't. And if you're judging it, it probably means you need to explore it. That's another
that was my philosophy.
Okay, that's another tantric philosophy, is that if there's something that you find that you're judging, probably means you need to lean deep into that dense feeling and question, where is that judgment coming from? It's actually an invitation of sorts. And it might not be a direct line or a direct invitation, but there's an invitation in there that is seeking healing and is seeking transmutation and an up leveling as well.
Well, interesting story. I'm gonna get real personal here now with some of my history, but when I was a young 20 something, I was that one that was judgmental about bisexual women, because my experience had been, you know, I was cheated on by a bisexual woman who had slept with most of the men in our friend group, including my man when I was in Belize. And I also fell in love at first sight while I was in Belize. So that stung less to learn about that when I got back, although I did not have sex with this man, and they did, you know, it still hurt, but it left this imprint in me of bisexual women are just promiscuous women, right? And I was very judgmental about it. And it wasn't until I moved out of such a Midwestern, like traditional culture, where I saw other options for sexuality, including my own, that the sexual attractions that I had toward women could even be acknowledged. Right. And then I started to remember crushes from when I was much younger that I just thought of as like, oh no, I just admired her. I didn't, but then re-looking at it, I'm like, oh no, that was definitely a crush. And then when I explored it, I had a unique opportunity. And in fact, at that time, I thought I had met my life partner. I thought I had met the person that I could spend the rest of my life with. It was a very deep connection, deep soulful connection, which is rare back in the dark ages, like I like to say, when people just, were like asleep, even more so. And yeah, we had a very telepathic connection, but I had this nagging thought of, what if I'm into women? What if I've never explored being with a woman? But I also was like, had this monogamous mindset, right? So I was just like, well, if I commit to him, or we get married, or we start our life path, then I'll never know this about myself. And I'm really big on knowing myself, and I want to learn things through experiencing things. So I've had many experiences of all types of, interactions in the world, I suppose. And we did break up, and I moved to San Diego and started grad school. And I was so in love with him that I was no longer attracted to men, because there was no other man that compared, in my mind. And so what blossomed? My attraction to women. And so it was over the course of the next couple of years where I actually explored that, because it was available to me, and it seemed like the next path. And I got to the point where I was dating mostly women, and then I realized I wanted partnership, and I wanted to be a mom at one point, and I didn't know how that would happen. But I knew that that was in my desires. And so I wasn't really meeting any men that I thought were appropriate. Somehow, though, my ex-husband, who's now my ex-husband, managed to like sneak in there and grab me, and we got accidentally pregnant within 2 months. And he was just the only guy that I was really considering. But I'll tell you why, because I thought he was so comfortable with male attention and male flirting, because we worked in a restaurant that was owned by gay folks in, actually not far from where you're living right now. And I thought maybe he might be bisexual as well. And now I'm more attracted to that, because I'm thinking, oh, then he's open-minded and he's not going to shame me for my sexuality. And he never did. He was just like so okay with my sexuality. So that is what kind of drew me to him, along with, he's very smart and funny and open-minded. There were other issues in the relationship. We were married for 8 years, together 10. And I would say throughout our marriage, now that you're explaining more open-heartedness or polyamorous way of being, there weren't ever I don't know if we ever really dealt with jealousies. It's so bizarre now that I think about it, because I've struggled with this shit and relationships afterward. But in that relationship, his best friend dated the same woman that dated him. So he dated a woman, and then she dated his best friend, and they were together for about 4 years. And I was friends with her because I was like, she's cool. It didn't bother me that they were together, because they aren't together anymore. So I was like, I'm cool with you. And I ended up, actually, when I got her a job, and then I got her a job at the place that I was working. And then when I left, I was like, here, take over for me, kind of thing. So, and to this day, I don't talk to either of those boys, but I still keep in touch with her. You know what I mean? So that was not a non-issue for any of us in this group. And I ended up marrying him. And she's actually the person who helped me see, do you think that maybe he's not who you think he is, and he's just pretending to be what you want, and that he's never going to catch up and never going to be able to keep up with the illusion? And I was like, damn. She's a therapist, social worker too. So I was like, damn, oh shit, I think you're right. But in our relationship, I was okay with him talking to his ex-girlfriend. I was okay. They had a special, unique relationship. As long as he's here, we're doing our thing. Let's all go to dinner. I don't care. I was talking to my ex, and I made it clear, are you okay with, yep, totally fine. I know how special he was to you. I don't mind if you guys email every once in a while, or if he wants to come have dinner with us, awesome, let's do it. That felt so freeing.
Yeah.
I loved it. And we were, at least I can't speak for him. I was sexually faithful. I didn't have sex with anyone else during my marriage. But I didn't also get my needs met. And I wonder, maybe because of his narcissistic tendencies and narcissistic personality, and the way that he wasn't able to be intimate, really truly intimate, is maybe how he was able to manage all of these multiple relationships and not be jealous or whatever. But at the end of the day, I guess what I'm saying is, even though I enjoyed that freedom, I wasn't getting enough. I wasn't getting enough intimacy. I wasn't getting enough like sexual satisfaction, these sorts of things. And ultimately there's many reasons why I left the relationship, but one of them was because I'm not ever going to be able to go to the depth of intimacy that I would want to go with this person. And so I don't know how much of that is related to like a monogamous polyamorous structure, because I know some people find the freedom in polyamory and some people find more freedom in a monogamous structure. And I think because we had a commitment and a marriage commitment, which I told him I'm very open-minded. If this needs to shift, let's talk about it. But we have a baby to raise and now 2 babies to raise. So let's just lock this down first. And that I felt like gave me more freedom to be who I am and to launch from a secure foundation and to not have these jealousies, because we knew who we were to each other.
Yeah. And I think, not feeling satisfied maybe in the intimate spaces, that's a dynamic of relating. So if you guys are able, he's okay with you talking to your ex and all of those things, that's fine. Now, how would he feel if you were, the level of intimate and emotion? If there was a lack of intimacy sexually, then I'm going to guarantee that there was probably a lack of emotional relatability as well.
It was more so the lack of emotional intimacy.
Okay. Yeah. So there
that was
you
the
go.
biggest issue.
Right. Because somebody can even have you can have sex and have the physical act of sex, but to have an emotional exchange that then leads up to physical interaction is a very different journey, right?
We had plenty of sex. Was it,
yeah.
Was it satisfying?
Right. There we go. See, and so that's the piece that we're asking for. Like, we want to have that type of intimacy with the partnership. And from that place, you make your connections outside. And it has to come from an honest relationship. Like, so more than polyamory and more than monogamy, it's about honesty. It's about honesty and being like honest about what makes you feel the most open. What makes you feel the most true and alive? And the truth is, for me, and I know for my partner, that we love on each other, and it feels really good to sometimes go and be out and about and have somebody, be attracted to us and just be like, hey, and, you carry on a conversation and the first line out of your mouth is not, I'm in a committed relationship, but could just be like open to see what is this connection about, that just because we're 2 adults and we feel something, it's not sexual. Like, how can we go against the norm that we are trained to believe that, like, definitely if a man and woman are talking to each other, there's going to have to be sex involved, or sex is going to come up. And if it's, perhaps if it's 2 people of the same sex and there's a vibe there, because, queer people are just kinky as fuck. Right. So it's like sex is always at play. But what would it look like to actually do the work within ourselves so that we are able to understand that these sexual desires are truly just desires of like spreading that energy into like multiple sources and multiple buckets, like many networks of relating. But when you're not doing that, it tends to get like clogged up into one channel of just thinking it's all sexual connection.
Well, and I think
what would it look like to just meet somebody and see what is the nature of this connection? And it, how about it not, don't even, if you think about the genitals, like actually check yourself. Just like when we're like, oh, that's my ego. Like, oh shit, that's my sex drive. That's my programming.
Yep.
You know, and try to do the work to practice not seeing everybody as a sexual potential.
Sex object, right?
Yeah, like that is what Shofar loves. I love when he talks about this. It's he calls it the auction block mentality.
Yeah.
And it's very real, you know. It's like we're putting each other on an auction block instead of really getting to know each other for who we are.
Well, and I slip into that when I feel like my needs aren't being met, you know, and or I have a need that's not being met, and I'm like, oh, potential, whatever, you know, and I'm like, what am I doing?
I am the same way, girl.
Yeah. So, but it's true. It happens with both men and women. And I do believe that, again, we're more fluid. We have this capacity to be open with lots of different people. Now, like defining it as who we have sex with or who we share our genitals with is a function of how fucked up sex is in our culture and how we just really don't understand it.
Right.
Because I'll even say, you know, using the example of my marriage, he was a bartender all through our marriage. And he, at the time when we got married, he looked like he could be Adam Levine's brother and twin brother. And Adam Levine was just coming up into superstardom at that time. So now here's this bartender that looks just like him. And I knew he was going to be getting numbers and tons of attention and all of this stuff. And I was like, okay, I can't control that, nor do I really want to, because I can't give him, he's a Leo, I can't give him all the attention that he requires. And so I need some help. So if these ladies at the bar are going to like fill him up, as long as he keeps that barrier of the bar and to the wedding ring, like, you know, and doesn't turn it into having to take action on that energy, I was totally fine with it.
Now, did he know about, and so what did your agreement look like around that? Did you guys share that with each other?
Well, our agreement, which we talked about the day before we got married, was that there's no sex with anyone else unless we've talked about it first and come to an agreement of what that would look like. And so that was a blanket statement that didn't have to happen. However, there were times where I saw a text message to like one of the cocktail waitresses he worked with, where he's like being very flirty and even like taking a picture of his bulge in his pants. And I'm like, and not in a like trying to come on to her kind of way, but in an appropriate way. Like if I was a female getting that from a married man, I would feel so uncomfortable. And I was like, you have to check yourself here. Like this, you know, stuff like that, that we would have to address.
Right. Because it's interesting that's also come up for me before, where it's like, okay, we're not having sex with other people. We're not going to like touch in a close, intimate way unless we talk about it. But then, all of a sudden there's text messages where that are very emotionally intimate or that are like exchanging. And it's like, oh, wow. Like we have to talk about that. Like, so this is the thing when we decide that, okay, we're not going to exchange genitals, that's a physical, right? But then it's like the levels of intimate relating are so many. We are human beings with so much to share and so many different ways of sharing it that we've got to get very clear on, you know, when we're quote unquote allowing, if you're in a partnership such as what you're describing, your marriage, and we're allowing each other, first of all, we don't allow each other to do shit. Right. Everybody's going to do what they want to do. The truth is, are you going to be honest about it? Period. Right. So it's like when we're doing things like that, it's really important to know also what are the steps into that and what are the steps out of that. So if it's like, we are not sharing our genitals, okay, what are the levels that are into that? What level are we at in terms of, and it is true. It's a very mental, it's a very masculine process
Mhm.
when you get into this, but that is what it requires to really allow the feminine to be safe
Yeah.
in this opening. And because the truth is what you just said, we live in a very fucked up, morphed, distorted sexual society where we can't, sleep with someone and say, hey, it's like a handshake. It's fine. It's
Yeah.
just not like that. We have culturally and religiously, placed so much on that, and the potential to have a child, the whole thing with all of what you were talking about, the exchange of different body fluids and all different sorts of things that can be exchanged when we do this stuff. And then energetic exchange, and the importance that it has had historically, and it's fucking literally colonized and won battles and countries.
Yeah.
The pussy.
Yeah.
So we have to be, when we are talking about opening that gateway of feminine energy within the man or the woman, we've got to have a process. And that is why I really love Progressive Love Academy and Kenya and Rakim's work, because they not only do they talk about it, and they also have processes and tools that unless you are practicing every day, you have really no place in opening your relationship. If you cannot talk to each other about your deepest shit of like why you need to keep, why do you need to keep going out there and sleeping with people? And if you're not able to talk about what that satisfies for you with your partner, and why do you have the need to keep flirting with people if you can't? Why do you have the need to keep watching porn? Why do you have the need to keep, ejaculating? And masturbating? You know what I'm saying? Like all of this. Why do you have the need to keep giving your number out even when you're in a relationship? Why do you have the need to, control and dominate the person once they live with you? These are all really important questions that if you're not able to have these conversations with your partner, like you really have no place in opening your relationship at all. Yeah,
I agree.
You just don't.
It's because whatever kind of relationship structure you're in, there needs to be integrity.
And it needs to be held as priority.
Yeah. And to answer
energy follows thought.
Totally.
Period. That's it.
Answer your question about, did you have certain agreements or whatever? I don't know that it was ever explicitly stated. It must have been after so many years together, but the operating principle that we used is outside intimacy was okay as long as it's adding to our relationship and not taking away from it. But that we had different ideas in the end about that, because he again was spending more and more time working or not coming home, and he's like, I need to spend time with my friends. I can't. And I'm like, we need a family day. We don't even have one family day where we're all together because we're working opposite shifts. And if we don't do that, our family is not going to survive.
Right.
And he's like, but I need my time with my friends first. And I was like,
yes. Well, this is a beautiful example within
both.
Yes, within a relationship where both partners can actually get what they want. And we've talked about this before. I've thrown that term around with you of the battery that, again, got it from Progressive Love Academy. But I like to do a practice with women where we do the battery within ourselves before we even attract our partnerships, because I think it's really powerful for you to get in line with your own masculine and feminine. But for example, if you were in that situation again, and maybe there's some listeners out there that are in this exact situation where it's like,
I'm sure there are,
right. It's like, okay, well, like you are allowed, like, as long as going and relating with other people is bringing back, I love that. Okay. It's bringing back energy, and you're bringing back energy into our relating. Okay. You think that's an agreement. However, if you're not talking about what that looks like, feels like, sounds like, walks like, smells like, talks like, and you're getting into the details of it and really getting to know this third entity, this third dynamic of a relationship that's between you and your partner. You're literally raising, your relationship is raising a third energy between you two. It's not, it's like you're having an energetic baby as your agreements with your sexuality and your sensuality. So if that was the case, it would say, okay, you want to go and, you know, hang out with your friends and have your time alone more, and you feel that that's going to feed into our relationship. Well, this is what I need in order to feel safe and excited about you doing that. I need a family day, and a date night where we are connecting.
The
You
other thing.
Now, if I can get those two things, I'll probably be better with, you know, that will allow me to hold the space for you to go do your thing. And guess what? See, now the partnership is actually like, okay, how am I balancing the needs of everything what's happening within me as well as my relationship?
Well, here's I totally agree, but here's where now we have the intersectionality of narcissism coming in, because what ended up happening is I said, of course you need time with your friends. I do too. I haven't done anything social in 7 years. I've been popping out babies and breastfeeding them and like not getting enough sleep and all of this stuff.
Exactly.
And I need that too. I've lost myself, and yet we have bills to pay and this and that. And so I want a family day. I would like us to have, it doesn't even have to be once a week, but at least a date. We didn't even celebrate our anniversaries, if you can believe that. We never went anywhere. We never did anything.
Wow.
And I would like my own time to go out and do something social. And my only way of getting time for me to actually be social was to go to trainings. And so I would go, because it was like helping my career or whatever. So I'd go to these trainings, and that's how I ended up with so many damn credentials too. It's like, that was my social life and my curiosity, but it wasn't allowed. He wouldn't have the conversation. Instead, he would just leave.
Then there's your sign again, right there. Not a time to open.
Yep.
And if he can't, and that's the other thing. If you are in a relationship and your partner is totally okay with opening up the relating for themselves, but they are not okay with you doing the same things, probably a sign that this is not a good match for you.
And it's not an integrity. It's patriarchal bullshit with perfume on it.
It's such bullshit. It's such bullshit. And it's really unfortunate that there are so many partnerships where one person is feeling that pressure, where like they have to be okay with their partner's desires, you know, even though their partner is not okay with them doing the same thing. That's just ridiculous.
It's enraging is what it is. Like if you want to get me hot, like in a not so good way, that's what'll do it. Yeah.
Oh yeah. That's just, it's
the inner feminist to me wants to burn it down.
There you go. Cause that's tapping into our ancestral wound of the woman and the woman scorned, you know. It's just kind of like, wow, no, that's just not, you know, for me, same thing. If I feel like judged for my sexuality, or if I feel like, you know, that's something that I'm working through too. Like if I feel like a man tells me that I'm being too masculine, that could be a trigger for me. Cause it's just like, oh, hey, you know what I mean? Like,
how would you do if you were in a 95% feminine world?
Exactly.
How'd you like if I called you too feminine because you had to learn how to exist by yourself in a 95% feminine world? How'd you like that, huh?
Exactly. And it's just like, or hey, how about, you know, like you then be more masculine than me so that I can be feminine.
Yeah, exactly.
If I'm showing up as masculine,
I can expand my femininity.
There you go. Because if I'm showing up as masculine, that means you're in the feminine.
Yeah, right.
So like one of us has got to make that shift.
Or you're coming in gender
in a way of ease and grace. If you want it to come out a good way, if you do it in the wounded masculine way, it'll be abuse.
Yep.
Right. And so this is why it's really, really important when we do the tantric work leading up to polyamory or deepening our monogamy. It doesn't fucking matter what you call it. Just fucking do your own shadow work, for God's sake. Yeah. That's really all it's about. That's it. Do your own fucking work and come to the table with honesty and be willing to talk about your real feelings and your real desires.
Mhm.
And be willing to have a person that you love be a mirror reflection of all your bullshit.
Yeah. Why is it so hard? I know for me, it's not fun. It's painful. It's fucking painful.
Because
But
we
I
don't
get to my
practice
Aries
enough.
South node, I'm just like, let's go. But most
We
people, a
don't
lot of people,
practice. We don't practice. We don't fucking practice. Our school system does not teach children how to fucking use their grit, use emotional grit. They teach them academic grit, fail forward, growth mindset, but then it's like, oh, when a kid wants to, fucking be something different in school or do something different, then it's a problem, right? Or we label our kids and we fucking diagnose them and medicate the shit out of them. And the kids who are really creative, we want to just assess them and call them, special education.
yeah,
So we live in a system where we are not practicing truly holding and creating womb space of creation for each other to be who we truly are. We are raised in a system that is raising fucking robots. And we're seeing it in our sexual and sensual relationships and our intimacy. We have fucking families falling apart over idiotic arguments over vaccination.
Yep.
It's disgusting.
Yep.
If that doesn't tell you about our lack of intimacy and connection as humanity on the planet, I don't know what does.
Alarm bells are going off everywhere across the planet right now, right? Yeah,
totally.
People are having to form new family groups because their families of origin like split and rejection and all of this stuff. It's like, yeah.
So it's all coming up right now. And, you are even seeing it in the younger generation. There's this whole play of like transgender, but there's also us talking about transhumanism. And then we're saying, okay, we're talking about AI, but we're also saying like, there's this, you're seeing the rise of energy work all over. I mean, it's literally in TV shows on Netflix.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, they're showing sexual energy healing everywhere. And it's becoming more and more common. And, I just shared an article where they were talking about the first study where they're actually finally looking at brain waves and their connection to women's orgasm and how it's affecting the planet when women are having orgasms. This is what indigenous folks have known, right? With the feminine energy of the planet. And soon we're going to start seeing they're doing the work on females. I'm going to say it right here, right now on YouTube, like fucking it's right here. They're doing it on females. And then they're going to soon find that when men practice semen retention and get into their own fucking feminine yoni work and they stop looking down on being feminine and see it as an empowering force for them, they're going to start measuring men's brain waves, men who are tapped into the feminine energy, and they're going to see how they're healing the planet as well. Guaranteed. But yeah, it's going to start with the women because we have open yonis. We have real easy access to the portal.
Yeah. Portals. I always say women are we're a bridge between heaven and earth. And that's exactly what it is. It's like the yoni portal. It's like we have one foot on earth and one foot in the heavens, and the yoni is the bridge in between. And what Golden beautifully said in our episode was that when I talked about the brain research of, I guess it's similar to what you're saying with the brain waves, but when women orgasm, their brain lights up as if they're having a spiritual experience. And that doesn't happen with men's orgasms, at least not yet. We'll see, like what you're talking about.
It's because as women, we haven't yet mastered how to penetrate the man's heart. We too are expecting everything from his dick. And we need to start seeing our men beyond their dicks.
Right.
And beyond their sexual performance, but look and to start demanding emotional capacity and emotional management and moving energy, period.
Yes. And then when sex becomes an orgasm becomes this spiritual experience, like Golden said, it's actually calling a soul into the womb. And of course, a woman would have this spiritual experience in the moment of orgasm because it's like shining that light, like come down, like we're ready for you kind of thing. And by the way, two things that I wanted to say to back up, I didn't want to interrupt you, but your metaphor about the relationship being the baby like the creation. I use that same metaphor in my Instagram post last week, which
Oh,
I know
wow.
you're not on Instagram anymore, but you always speak my thoughts. So I thought I would share
I
another
love
example
that.
with you every time without
Oh,
fail.
that's so cool.
And then I wanted to let our listeners know that the other spectrum that you and I exist on, opposite ends, but same philosophy, is the school district. So you were a principal,
Hmm.
um, of working with a lot of adolescents and I think younger ones too. And
Eighth grade. Yeah.
okay, all right. And I was a mental health clinician. So I was also part of the IEP process, working primarily with special ed and a lot of these kids, that had diagnoses, labels, or whatever, that were incredibly energetically sensitive. And so I feel like, when you talk, it's refreshing to hear you talk about being an administrator and an
Hmm.
educator and seeing some of the same issues that I was seeing as somebody who was directly commissioned to teach emotional intelligence and all of the things that could get them to access their education. And of course, we both, had to leave that mainstream system for obvious reasons, maybe, and just unsubscribe from the way that was happening and seeing
Well,
the.
I mean, the arts is a beautiful way for the school system to reclaim sensuality and
Mhm.
to retrain children to not be robots. But until the system is ready to raise real artists, which means they're ready to raise revolutionaries who are going to question the system, because that's what artists do.
Oh yeah.
You know, then that's not going to happen. Like, we, as parents and as educators and as teachers and as guides, we have to know that the very system the very system we live in is the very system that has enslaved our people for decades and has enslaved humanity for decades. So you got to know at some point that if your child is not coming home thinking for themselves, it's a problem. And if your child is coming home worried about fitting in and the school is not doing anything about encouraging your child's unique, authentic voice, it's a problem. And if
Mhm.
the school system is asking you to be like the rest and not honor, how you want to raise your child and the life you want to live and with your child and how you believe to raise your child in the way that you believe, that's a problem.
And I
That's
think I think it really
anti-revolutionary.
a lot of it does stem from the sheer numbers though too. It's like, I think of like Kaiser Permanente, like they have this herd healthcare, which is like
Right.
put them in groups, just how many
Totally.
numbers, how many bodies can we get in, what's the most amount of money. And of course, any practitioner that works for Kaiser, they're the highest paid, and
Right.
getting the low, like the services are really, like, a lot of people were not happy with the Kaiser services because of that, like, quick, fast, get as many people as possible model, including myself. I saw a therapist at Kaiser and I had to advocate to even get a one-on-one therapist. They want to put me in a group, and I'm like, I'm a therapist who does groups. I don't think a group is really going to work that well for me right now, because I'm going to like want to lead the whole thing, So it just didn't work. But I feel like sometimes the school system, I mean, as you and I both know, working in the public school system is very overcrowded, very under-resourced. And it's like, how many bodies can we get in here so that we can get that
An
funding?
assembly line. It's an assembly line, and the
Yeah.
degree is the fucking UPS, is the code. That, what is it? The ISBN number, or I know it's not a UPS code, but it's the code, the barcode to fucking sell. If you're for
Mhm.
sale, when you get your
Mhm.
degree, you know what I'm saying? And if you can't see it that way, I don't know what else to tell you. But if you don't realize that the educational system is an assembly line, pumping out our students left and right, and you know craft and just real deciding where student belongs where according to how they test on a national test that comes from the military industrial complex, which is like the original auction block
Mhm.
of all auction blocks. That, I mean, all of it, the systems are corrupt, y'all. Like, we
Yeah.
just got to be willing to see that stuff. And it's all coming out to play right now, if you haven't noticed.
Well, it's coming out to play, but also, Marianne Williamson, who ran for president,
Right.
talked about this a lot, and all of this stuff. And I so admire her, and I knew she wouldn't win because it's a big system that she's
Oh,
trying to
yeah.
take down. And they you know, she even was open then about how she was so punished and the things that they did. And along, you know, she didn't even say all of it, but she just said it was a very hard thing to be a woman and to be speaking about the things that I was speaking about on this campaign trail. And it was
Of
way,
course.
way bigger than she ever thought that it would be, the way that she was
I think
treated.
she got a lot farther than most women who
Mhm.
talked her talk and believed what she believed in, you know,
And I do believe
got
that
farther than a lot
she
would.
was part of the consciousness shift, because even the fact that she was saying those words on a political debate stage was pretty revolutionary, pretty,
Mhm.
I mean, I was watching like, wow, this is real life. I knew that it wasn't going to change the outcome of the election, but I think maybe it did expose some people to something that they had never heard, even through the chastising of her, because as she's being chastised, you know, like you said, we judge the things that we might be, that might be within us. And
Yeah.
so people are just starting to wake up a little bit about that.
Mhm.
We veered off of the main topic, but it's all related.
It really is, because polyamory and monogamy, what's really, it doesn't matter, you know, which one you claim, which camp or which sect you claim, you know, it's about sovereignty and honesty. And that is the same thing that we need in our system today. And so if we can't trust our big mommy and daddy, you know, the fucking red, white, and blue, if we can't trust that and feel safe in that, how the hell do we think that we can trust and feel safe in the children it produces?
Right.
So we have work to do. And this tantric work and the shadow work and the work that the mind body work that you're doing as well, really all it is it's about tapping in to the original code before somebody told us how to be.
Right. Yeah. Finding your true voice, your authentic spirit, what it is that you came here to do. And most of us came here to, like you said, be revolutionary, shake some stuff up. And you know how I know it? Just because of the shit that we're seeing. Like, of course, if you're here on the planet now, you came here to be part of a transformation. And speaking of the US, the red, white, and blue, you know, we have the US Pluto return in 2022 in February. And that is the same planetary alignment as the Civil War. And when we actually became, you know, became a country and became, you know, our states. So it's, or actually not the Civil War, the Revolutionary War. We had aspects of the
Oh,
Civil War before.
powerful.
Yeah, the Revolutionary War. So it's about the US now with that Pluto return, with Pluto being transformation, the shadow, depth, sexuality, money, all of those things. It's forcing those conversations up out of the depths. And the US is now going to have to reckon with its history of being built on slavery, with its history of being built on human rights abuses, with its history, its violent past, with its history of, like, you know, owning women as property. Not to say that the US is the only country doing that, but we are supposed to be this place of freedom. And we really just brought over the fucked up ideals from other countries, just like we do in these families of origin. You know, we do something different. We think we're being so different. And then they subconsciously sneak in and we realize we're in the same fucking pattern and a different flavor of every other generation before us, until we start to wake up. And that's what Pluto is doing in February for the whole country and everybody in it. And I've been listening to a lot of astrologers from other countries, and they're watching us very closely because they said whatever happens in the US is going to affect the whole world.
Wow, wow, wow.
So
Powerful.
this is all work. And as you and I know, whatever happens collectively is also happening individually,
Right.
and vice versa. And so how do we make the biggest impact? We do our own work.
Yes.
So what are you, like you said, with the shadow, so profound. If you're running from your shadow, you're avoiding the shadow, Pluto's going to catch up with you in February. So you might as well start now. You're not going to be able to hide anymore. So start doing the work in your relationships. Start, you know, like getting used to it, because it's about to get gnarly if you resist. You know, it's going to force it. It's going to force it through, which is not fun. It's better just to go on your own terms and like, let's go.
Yeah, sometimes, you know, like, you know, just put your, and if you're like, well, how do I even know what wants to come out right now? You know, it's like, start with where are the places that, you know, you feel like your needs aren't being met.
And where are you triggered?
Yeah. Where are the discomforts? Those are the places that are seeking comfort, and they're talking to you. And I think what you're saying is, if you don't listen to those, maybe perhaps in February 2022, there's going to be this huge energetic momentum with the planets and with all of the forces of nature that are pretty much going to bring those things up regardless. So instead of having it feel like a huge teardown or a huge earthquake of your reality, you can start to slowly look at it now, and at this big mess of a yarn could actually, you can start to see like, okay, there's some through lines here. And so when February 2022 comes, it'll feel like a confirmation of the work that you've already started.
For sure. And start preparing your lifeboat, because the storm is coming, and who knows what it's really going to look like. Astrology is simply the weather. But what I like to say is that it's an energetic pattern that's assisting us. And so it's like, yeah, it's going to be gnarly, but it's also bringing all the stuff up to the surface. Why would we ever dive down? You would, because you're you, but why would any average human dive into that stuff and want to bring it up if it wasn't already causing you trouble or pain? Most people are like, I'm cool here until I'm not cool anymore. And then if I have to, I'll address it. Most people are not like doing the deep dive into shadow work like you tend to do, because you said I'm not afraid of death, so I don't mind being in the dark places. They're not scary to me. And I don't like being in myself. I don't like being in the dark places, but if I have to go, I'll go. I'm like, all right, let's go. And I know I'm going to be fine. It's going to it's going to hurt, but we're going to be fine in the end, and it's going to be better in the end. And I think that's the important thing for people to look at, whether they're navigating the shifts and the transformations in their relationship, again, whether monogamous or polyamorous. But how are this Pluto energy, like how is it calling you to more integrity? How is it calling you to really looking at the roots of oppression in your relational dynamic? How is it, as we are doing this collective work in the US, which is going to be asking itself the same questions as a country, and how it's, enslaved or oppressed people with its contracts and its mandates and its shoulds and its laws and its regulations that are double standards depending on the color of your skin, depending on your gender, these sorts of things. And it'll be interesting, but it's an opportunity. So if we look at the opportunity and knowing that often things get really gnarly until they get better, but the more we embrace the change and go through instead of around, the quicker we get through it to the other side.
Yes. I think that's a beautiful closing.
Yeah, I like it. I like it too. So we did pretty good. An hour, less than an hour and a half. We've been known to go 2. So, and we both came pretty energized and fired up. So this is good. This is really good. I think this has been one of my most favorite episodes, actually.
Beautiful.
That we've had. I really love the way that the conversation went, and the realizations, and the just bringing up the micro and the macro of this issue, and how this is so much more than sex or genitals or
oh my God, we are so vast. Like that is just the fun. Like it's the fun stuff, but like the depth at which what we have available to us is profound.
Well, rock on, sister. It was a pleasure. And also just wanted to mention how much fun I had drumming with you this weekend. I have no idea. I'm like all ready to buy
good. I loved it.
Oh, I was like, you don't even know. Like I was just like, my fingers are a little bit sore today, but I'm loving it. I'm like, I'll be there every Sunday. Yeah, I'm gonna probably get one because I got to now.
You should definitely get one. I encourage everybody to buy a drum, and yes, I love that. And I think a lot of people will be getting drums in that class, and I think that that's so great because we'll be supporting a really powerful teacher too. So he has like direct connections and can get.
He's so sweet. He's so sweet, but like so very like. wanted to. I was like, I just snapped right back into like fifth grade mode. And I was like, I was okay with it too. That's a weird thing. I was like, that's some talent because I was okay with it.
Yeah, well, he has a really gorgeous way. He's feminine because he's such an artist, and he knows how to let people like finds the creative flow, but he knows where to put in the structure so that you can have fun.
Yeah.
And that's really what I appreciate about him so much.
And he didn't make it too hard where anybody felt like they just had to
Oh yeah, everybody felt so successful. I mean, that's the beautiful part about arts is like really doing artistic and creative things as an adult. Being in the adult playground, I like to call it. It's really about reclaiming all the moments that you felt like you couldn't.
Oh, that so resonates. I am very clear with this Sagittarius energy and this energy shift the last couple of days, like where everything's expansive. Jupiter is back on scene now. It's play for me. And when I'm not in my PhD, I am taking every opportunity to play because I've been inside for a long time. And now it's time to go outside and play. So thank you for introducing me. And
I'm happy about it. Good.
All right. Good night, everyone. Thank you for everyone who joined us live. And this will be posted here once it converts. If you're not on my newsletter yet, natashaedwina.com. Kirti's newsletter is dilsculture.com. Yes. So go sign up for hers as well. Stay in touch. We were doing lots of cool things individually and collectively. So love to stay in touch with you.
Okay.
Bye.